touching wood and crossing my fingers, I have remarkably few niggles or aches and pains for this stage of training. Hello and welcome. So, week 10 is done, which leaves just 2 more big weeks before the taper begins. After seeming like a distant event for so long, Berlin is now just over a month away. It's scary stuff, but also quite exciting. This week was a big week, but began like usual on Monday with a recovery double, 7.5 miles in the morning and 7.5 miles in the evening. My legs didn't exactly feel fresh following the 24-mile long run the day before. However, they ticked over nicely and the heart rate stayed nice and low, no doubt helped by the fact it was a lovely cool morning. So cool in fact that I wore a t-shirt for the first time in months. The afternoon run was a bit more of a grind. I felt fine, but I just wasn't really that up for it, but I got it done. Tuesday was a lovely still morning for 12 miles along the canal. Sunny but still cool, basically perfect conditions. I felt great and averaged 7:12 per mile pace with a nice low heart rate. The legs felt pretty good too, relatively speaking at least. The afternoon recovery also went well. It felt nice and relaxed and the heart rate stayed low. Workout Wednesday was another big session from the NAZ Elite training plans, this time 20 by 1 kilometre at half marathon pace with 1 minute recovery. Obviously, after my poor performance at Newark, I wasn't 100% certain what my half marathon pace is, so I decided I'd aim for what I managed last time, 3:42 per kilometre or around 5:57 per mile pace. Although note at the track, I always work off splits, as GPS can get a bit wonky going round and round in circles, and it quite often is overly optimistic with your pace. I scribbled down the 200 metre splits on my hand, so I knew what I was aiming for. I didn't feel that great on the way up to the track. That can often be the case. It's an uphill run, and I'm also usually carrying a pack with my workout shoes in, which I'm not used to. I got going and knocked out the first few reps right around 3:42 pace. However, for some reason, I wasn't feeling especially up for the session, and I started to get into a bit of a negative mindset, wondering how on earth I'd managed 20 of these reps. I bargained with myself to just get to halfway and then go from there, and despite not really feeling with it, the pace was coming out good, with all the reps between 3:41 and 3:43. This told me it was just a mental battle, so I just took it one at a time and churned through them. It was tough at times, and I half considered cutting the session short at a couple of points towards the end. However, the pace was still good, so I just tried to ignore that little voice in my head and keep going. My legs felt really tired on the last few reps, but I managed to keep the legs going, even though at times it felt like I wasn't running very fast at all. The final 10 were all between 3:41 and 3:44, and the overall average was 3:42.3, which weirdly enough is exactly the same as when I did this session last year, down to the 10th of a second. So overall, it ended up being a really good session despite the mental battles. I'm not a big believer in key workouts because it's the sum of the training that counts, not one individual session. However, I do think this was one of the more important ones last time around, both from a physical standpoint. Running 20 kilometres at sub 6 minute mile pace is a bloody good workout, and also from a mental standpoint, completing the session really gives you a lot of confidence. And while the fight against the desire to give up wasn't fun, it's great practice for the mental battle towards the end of a marathon. So job done. Thursday was a little warmer for another canal run, this time 11 miles. The legs felt pretty good considering the workout the day before, although I did feel a bit tired generally. Nonetheless, the pace was decent at 7:21 per mile and the heart rate was good. The afternoon recovery felt fine, although it was a little on the warm side, which meant the heart rate was high. I think one of my least favourite aspects of training for a marathon during the summer is these hot afternoon runs. Friday morning wasn't super warm, but the humidity was up around 100%, which meant it was a sweaty one for my medium long run. I felt a bit tired and flat and not particularly up for it. I often find these Friday medium long runs the toughest of the week, I think because it comes fairly soon after a big workout on the Wednesday, and with the knowledge you've still got a big long run to come on the Sunday. Anyway, I was half tempted to cut the run short, However, the pace, while not quite as fast as I have been on my medium long runs lately, was far from terrible, so I pushed on. I was pleased I did, as I sped up a bit towards the end and averaged 6:54 per mile, which isn't bad. Looking back, I think it was just tiredness from the Wednesday session, so no big deal. Weirdly, I actually felt pretty decent on the recovery run that afternoon, although it was warm again, which meant it was a struggle to keep the heart rate down. After the run, I was conscious of how, other than general tiredness, and I say this touching wood and crossing my fingers, I have remarkably few niggles or aches and pains for this stage of training. I was definitely feeling more beaten up and creaky at this point before Manchester. Hopefully it's a sign that all the yoga and strength and conditioning I'm doing is helping. Fingers crossed. Saturday was another early start before it warmed up too much for 11 miles along the canal. It was a lovely sunny morning and I felt decent. The heart rate was nice and low and the pace came out at a decent 7:16 per mile average. I particularly enjoyed the mile or so I spent chasing a heron who would fly a bit further down every time I approached. Sunday was not only a long run but another big NAZ session, one they call Tempo Steady Tempo. After a few miles warm up, you run a 4-mile tempo section aiming for something around half marathon pace. You then run 10 miles steady before another 4-mile tempo section, which is hard work after 16 miles already ran. This is probably the toughest long run workout in the plan, so I was a little nervous about it, although probably less so than last time when it was a complete unknown. Unfortunately, I had a rubbish night's sleep due to the hot weather. However, I didn't feel too tired from this, so I was optimistic I could still have a good run. The first tempo section went pretty well. I averaged 6:05 per mile, so a little slower than my presumed half marathon pace, but right around what I managed when I did this workout last time. The steady section actually felt really good. The legs turned over nicely and I felt pretty relaxed. Despite a few lumps, I averaged 6:45 per mile for this section. It was then time for the dreaded second tempo section. I really struggled with this one last time around. I just couldn't get my legs moving quickly and only averaged 6:26 per mile, so not even marathon pace. This time went much better, averaging 6:13 per mile, so still a bit of a slowdown, but much better than last time. In the context of a big week, after a big Wednesday session, on a poor night's sleep and in warmish conditions, I'll take it. Overall it came to 22.5 miles at an average of 6:33 per mile pace, so I'm really pleased with that. I'm pretty sure it's my fastest long run ever, and while I did feel pretty tired by the end, I wasn't completely destroyed, so that shows my endurance is there. So, a very solid week with 2 big workouts and nearly 122 miles in the bank. As I said at the beginning, there are now just 2 more big weeks before the taper start, although that first week of the taper, while reducing in mileage, does still feature a big midweek session and also the Worcester 10K, so there's still plenty of work to do. Weirdly, despite everything going pretty well at the moment, and my workouts matching or exceeding what I managed prior to Manchester, I still don't feel all that confident about my fitness at the moment. I think it's because usually at this point in a marathon training plan, I'm lucky enough to have set a PB or 2, but this time, for various reasons, that hasn't happened. I have the Kenilworth Half Marathon coming up on Sunday, which I'd always planned to run at marathon pace. After the poor performance at Newark, I half considered racing it. However, I knew there was no way I could do that without either compromising the weeks before and after it, or not tapering enough and risking another poor performance. Therefore, I've decided to stick to the original plan and run it at marathon pace. If I can put in a good performance there and hit marathon pace feeling decent, I think that will give me some of the reassurance I need. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and subscribe to my channel to follow my journey towards the Berlin Marathon. And if you have any questions or anything you'd like me to cover in future videos, please leave a comment below. Cheers.